Here's the badass women from history story that you need to hear today. There are some incredibly heroic stories from World War II. Today, let's talk about the woman who saved a dozen Jews by hiding them in a basement of a Nazi officer's house. Irena Gut was a nursing student when Russia and Germany invaded Poland in 1939. Right away, she joined a band of Polish resistance fighters that hid out in the woods. That is, until a group of Russian soldiers found her alone in the woods, assayed her, and beat her unconscious. After recovering in a Russian hospital, she was forced into hard labor. During this time, Irena grew so weak that she passed out in front of a Nazi officer who subsequently felt bad for this blonde-haired, blue-eyed 17-year-old woman. He offered her a less taxing job at a soldier's mess hall. Now, one day in July of 1942, Irena witnessed something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. I won't go into detail what that was because we've all heard the horror stories. That day, something flipped in Irena. She was going to risk her life to save anyone she could. While working in the soldiers' quarters, she befriended 12 German Jews. While serving food and drinks to Nazi officers at night, she heard ahead of time when raids were going to happen. She knew she was going to save these 12 friends, she just wasn't quite sure how. That same Nazi officer offered her a job as a housekeeper in his stolen villa. In this stolen villa, she discovered a secret tunnel that led to a bunker beneath a gazebo out back. So she managed to sneak her friends one by one in through the tunnel and into the underground space. When the Nazi officer would leave for the day, she'd invite her friends up to spend time in the house with her, and then bring them back downstairs before the officer came home. As pressure grew, everything got dangerous. One day, the officer came home to discover 2 of these people in his house. She was terrified he was going to report them to the Gestapo, so she offered to be his mistress in return for his silence. Irena, not wanting to tell her friends how she was saving them, suffered in silence. Now, about this time, Russians were closing in. So Irena convinced the Nazi officer to look the other way while she smuggled these people into the woods to hide out with the Polish resistance fighters. In that time in the forest, one of the women who was pregnant gave birth to a baby. Because of Irena, every one of them, including the baby, survived. Irene made it to a displaced persons camp in Germany with the help of many of her Jewish friends. And in 1949, she arrived in the United States. Irene went on to live a long life, marry an American, and have children. After a long period of silence, Irene told her story to anyone who would listen: schools, synagogues, newspapers, and she made sure that the story was not forgotten. If you want more badass women from history stories, like, follow, and check out my books.